Pippa, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm fine. Getting used to life in lockdown.
Right, kids, work, life.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's like 4 jobs instead of 2, which is
Right.
normally motherhood and careers. And now it's cleaning and cooking and doing everything else, clearing out my house. It's,
I know, we've cleared so much, but I actually enjoy the cleaning up thing. I enjoy getting the scrubbing brush out.
Yeah.
Find it quite meditative.
Yeah. I did for about 4 days and then I got sick of it.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to my Saturday clean. Again, it means I get away from the husband and the children for 2 hours of cleaning with a podcast. So I quite like it. But you and I have both had similar experiences with fertility issues. We've both spoken really openly about them, written about them in publications. And so when Power of Women suggested that you and I speak, I couldn't have thought of a better person to be honest, because of your openness already and our similar journeys. But just from my side, I'm sure you felt the same. I never thought I would have a problem with fertility. I've been fit and healthy, no drugs, just drinking, not excessively, very, very fit and healthy. So for me to come across the fact that I couldn't conceive a second child when my first had been relatively easy was just something that I'd never expected, and I was only in my mid-30s. And then you, of course, had a similar experience. What age were you when you found out that there was going to be a problem?
I think I was 31. I mean, no, I got the shock of my life. I definitely didn't think, it just didn't occur to me that I'd have a fertility problem. You know, you spend a lot of your 20s trying not to get pregnant.
Right.
And it just doesn't really ever occur to you that actually when you then try to get pregnant, it won't happen.
Yeah.
And I got married when I was 31, and we decided, I think after about 6 months or a year, to start trying for a baby. And I was very relaxed about it. I was very casual. I wasn't like neurotic. I didn't go on like a big healthcare regime before I started.
You were really young, right? So why would you think there was going to be a problem?
Yeah, I just never thought about it. I did know that I suffered from endometriosis because I'd been diagnosed in my early 20s. But, you know, my mum had also suffered from it, and it wasn't really badly, I didn't feel.
And then at which point did you say we need to possibly go and speak to somebody about this?
I think I'd been trying for about 8 months. Again, I wasn't really worried about it because lots of my friends, you know, I knew not everybody falls pregnant the first month they try. So
give it a year, don't they?
Yeah. You know, I wasn't 21. I was 31 or 32, I think. So I had a good handle on the situation. I just thought, oh, you know, I'm just going to go and get myself checked out. I've never been particularly someone who goes to a gynecologist regularly. So I thought I'm just going to go get myself checked out. And again, even when I went in, I was quite relaxed. And then the lady kind of was looking, I was having an ultrasound. Is it an ultrasound? Yeah. And she was kind of looking at my eggs, and she went, And I was like, what is it? She went, yeah. She said, there aren't as many eggs as I would hope for a woman your age.
Right.
And I was like, what do you mean? She said, well, really, you know, you've got the number of eggs you've got is probably around the amount that I would expect a woman 10 years older than you to have. And it was just like, oh my God.
Sure. Yeah.
The shock. I was like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? I don't know what you're even talking about. I've never heard of such a thing. And I said, well, what does that mean for me? She said, well, it's definitely going to make it more difficult for you to fall pregnant, and the quality of your eggs might not be what you would hope them to be. And she said, did your mum have early menopause? And I was like, I don't know, because she had a hysterectomy at 42, 43. So then I rang my mum up afterwards and I said, you know, did you have early menopause? She said, well, I did go into menopause, but that was only because I had an early hysterectomy.
Right.
And I said, why did you have a hysterectomy? She said, because she had such heavy bleeding. That's what she was advised to do. But, you know, my mum had a baby at 36, 37. So you know, she'd never had an issue getting pregnant. So then I asked my grandma, when did you have the menopause? And she said 46.
Early.
And I thought, yeah. And I thought, hang on. And I was told that it's often it's hereditary. You often have the menopause a similar time as your mum or your grandma does. So that's when I realised, oh shit, nobody had ever told me this. And my mum said to me, it didn't occur to me to tell you because we always had kids when we were younger. So it wasn't really an issue.
Like with you, no one said there's going to be a problem. In the media, like I had my son 8 years ago, nearly. And even then in the media, there was nothing out there to tell me at, what was I, 34, that there was going to be a problem with my fertility, that there was going to be any issues. I was still of the fairy tale childhood story that you have children when you're ready and you meet the right guy, and there's nothing about age or body, you know, infertility or anything else. So when I had my first son, I was totally fine. 7 months in, got pregnant, blah, blah, blah. We tried for 3 years for my second child. And it was only after about 3 years that we did start to do IVF, because I was approaching 40. And then it all starts coming out. You know, you do speak to people who've also had problems, but it's so hush hush. It's better, it's getting better. Like your article, my articles, it has helped, and so many other people that are now being vocal about, you know, infertility. But when it happened to me, it was a whole new ground. It was a new territory. I knew nothing. I didn't know how my body worked. I didn't know how any of this was supposed to happen if my body wasn't doing it for itself. So yeah, and then you go into that scary world of IVF, and you and I have actually had a really similar experience in that what we experienced were very expensive. I mean, okay, we're in a position that, yes, we had savings, and you chose to use those savings for IVF, and other people who do it on the NHS, other people who maybe don't have options. So the whole thing, there's so much to say on it, in that your expectation levels, your hormone levels, and how it affects relationships.
I think ignorance and feeling alone is a real part of infertility, because no one tells you. I hadn't heard of anybody who'd had IVF before I found out I had it. And do you know what? Initially, I was quite excited, because I remember, so the doctor said to me, you know, your best chance of getting pregnant now is to have IVF. Yeah. And I remember thinking, maybe we'll have twins. I'll be done, you know, 2 in 1 go, finished. I had no idea of the emotional, the financial, the social consequences and fallouts that actually come from IVF. Yeah. I mean, they just came as a very rude awakening and shocked me very, very quickly. But again, I'm a journalist. I've worked in women's journalism. I'd worked in it for 12 years before then. I'd written features about IVF. I'd written features about egg donation, but I didn't really understand what the emotional impact of what I was writing about. I don't think I told my friends initially when I found out I had a problem. I think we didn't tell anybody. I think we just kept it quiet.
Was that embarrassment, or just because you wanted to be private?
Shame and privacy. Shame. I just felt this shame that I wasn't able to just get pregnant like how I felt everybody else. Did you feel like that?
I felt very embarrassed that my body wasn't working, and all around me were these friends of mine, and whether or not they were telling the truth, I'll never know. Maybe they were having IVF. I don't believe they were. Up pops another pregnancy, and up pops another one. And I'm just like, oh God, now the more it's happening, the more of a failure I feel, because my body, and I also felt a failure to my husband, not in some archaic 1950s housewife way, but just, oh my God, I'm not helping us to get another child. My body's not allowing this to happen as much as we both want it to happen. So it is shame, failure, guilt, the whole lot goes with it as well.
Yeah, I felt, I'm not a particularly private person. I'm a very open person, and I've never felt so privately guarded about anything in my whole life. You know, I just didn't feel that I wanted to open up what I felt was a private conversation between me and my husband with everybody. So I think we actually went, I tell a lie, we told his sister. Yeah. And she said, we went straight, the first person we spoke to was his sister, and I said, what do I do? And we went straight online. We didn't even know where to find an IVF clinic. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. We Googled it. We found the Tatler Doctor's Guide, I think. And literally, we took the number one, they had someone on there who was like the number one clinic in the UK, it said. Yeah. And I called them up, and there and then, and I made an appointment. I don't think they could see me for 6 weeks. And I remember even just that being devastating, because it was like, oh, I can't wait another 6 weeks. I need to get cracking. I need to get going.
Urgency. When you decide, or when I decided to do IVF, I think I was the same as you. There was a waiting time. And yeah. I was like, no. I've got to start this. My body needs to start this now. You know, there's no waiting. And this also happened with all of the rounds I had. Every time I took a pregnancy test after the 2-week wait, the dreaded 2-week wait, that if you're going through IVF, you will understand what this means. The 2-week wait is awful. And I would just phone the clinic the same day I got my period, and I would say to them, when am I coming in again? When am I starting this again? I'm ready. When am I coming in? Because you just have to do it.
Urge. Once you get the urge and you want to have a baby, it's really, really difficult to remove that sense of it's a desperation. It's not just an urge, it's an absolute desperation. So we went through a round of IVF. It failed miserably. I produced 2 eggs. I think only one of them was fit to be put back inside me, but actually a lot of it was because the doctors hadn't given me the right amount of medicine. They hadn't monitored me properly, and I have to say I will never forget that first meeting with that IVF doctor. It was horrific.
Wow.
You know, he was a greying middle-aged man, and he was very cold. He had no bedside manner, and I remember sitting there and obviously asking him questions, and I said to him, you know, how long do you think it'll take me to get pregnant? And his response was, how long is a piece of string? And then I said, you know, are there any risks to having an IVF baby? You know, are there higher risks of, I don't know, complications or problems? And he said, well, we just don't know if IVF babies don't drop dead at the age of 40, because Louise Brown, the first IVF baby who was ever born, isn't 40 yet. And it was just horrific. And I remember coming out of that meeting feeling genuinely traumatized, and I think it set me on a very negative path down my IVF journey, I would say.
I didn't have a great one, because I just felt, like I've expressed to you before, that I was on a conveyor belt. I really felt that there was no sort of relationship. When I was in the room with everybody, it was fine. And when I was in the room with the consultant, yes, he was very charming to me, but I really felt like I was a money-making pot that was on a conveyor belt. Pot 1, pot 2, pot 3, you know, you come in, you're tested, they made a lot of mistakes as well where I went. They get my weeks wrong because the sonographer hadn't checked my form properly. So they'd be assuming I was a different patient, and I just brought all of these things to them because it was just too many desperate, like I was, women with their partners trying to get pregnant. And they don't all just see dollar signs, but it's a huge money-making business.
When you've been through it all, to then have a failed test, it's just beyond heartbreaking. A, from a financial perspective, that you're going to have to spend another few £1,000s to have a go. B, from a physical perspective, you think, oh God, am I really going to have to put my body through all of that again?
Yeah.
You know, from your relationship, that, you know, you're letting each other, you feel like you're letting your partner down. And also just from just the whole thing is so devastating. You don't necessarily want to jump straight on a call to somebody, go, it didn't work. No, you want time to process what's going on and process all those thoughts and emotions.
In times when these great things happen, great as in huge, not great as in joyous, you really do find out the friends that are your friends. Oh my God, your friends. I mean, I had an experience I've written about that I don't want to go into now, but oh my God, there were a few girlfriends, no guy friends, but that's okay. A few girlfriends that dropped everything. Like, they literally dropped everything. They were round in the evenings. One offered, I had a store in Notting Hill at the time. She offered to run the whole store. I said, honey, you've got no retail experience, but thank you very much. You know, the other one would just bring food parcels and leave them on the door. Oh God, now I feel like crying. And then just leave and just text me and say, there's something on your door. And when people show this, which is the beauty of having a traumatic experience, or any experience that's not a positive one, is finding out true kindness really exists. So as much as everything that ever happens to all of us can be good and bad, it's what comes from the bad that can be the most beautiful thing you've experienced. It's really kind of an odd way of saying it if something really bad happens. But just going back for a second with the IVF, and we're speaking about the process and everything else, just as a bit of an explanation to someone who's watching this, and I'm sure you had a similar protocol, which is what they call it. My first one was an overstimulation, I believe, of drugs to my body. So you prepare your body, and then this is for someone who's never done it or is thinking about it and doesn't know much about IVF. You prepare your body, then your consultant gives you the protocol that you're going to go through, which means 3 weeks of injections every day, a few times a day, plus tablets and pessaries and all sorts of things if they choose to do it that way. And you do become emotionally unstable. I don't know if you felt the same.
Well, I think the drugs actually do affect your hormones. So it's actually a physical thing. It's not a psychological thing. Yeah. It's a physical reaction to the drug. Yeah.
It's creating everything that your body is not creating for itself, and 10 times more, or whatever the statistic is. And then you have to build up to finding out, you know, your eggs are there or they're not there. They're a good quality, they're a bad quality. You have 1, you have 15, whatever your luck is on the time. Through this, you're also having every 2 days, scans to see how the eggs are growing. They're often internal scans, which it's intrusive. You've got to do it. You've got to like just say, I've got to get this done. So you just lay back, everything happens. And then you go in and you're put under general anesthetic to have an operation to remove your eggs. And it's painful, not desperately, but afterwards you're uncomfortable. And then, yes, then you've got to do the whole 3 days, how are my eggs growing as an embryo, how my embryo is growing now. They've been
phone calls when you'd ring the doctor up and say, how many eggs have turned into embryos, what quality are they? And I remember holding my breath before those calls, praying that the eggs were turning into embryos and that they were growing, they were continuing to grow at a decent rate for them to then be able to put them in.
Because they want us to get to 5 days, right? They want us to get the embryos to 5 days.
I only got to 5 days twice out of 6 rounds of IVF.
Mm. And did they produce children for you? No.
No, I never had. I fell pregnant once.
Yeah.
Yes, I fell pregnant once through IVF. It was my 5th round. I'd miscarried, I think, around 6 weeks. It was a very, very early pregnancy.
Still traumatic when that happens.
It was traumatic, but actually it did give me some hope because I'd never been pregnant before in my life. Mm-hmm. So I just thought, okay, I can fall pregnant. Yes, I can fall pregnant. Yeah. But we decided before, you know, the best advice anyone gave me before we went ahead was work out how many rounds of IVF you want to do, financially, emotionally.
That's a tricky one.
And we decided 6. We're going to try for 6 rounds of IVF, and then we're going to move on to the next stage, whether that's egg donation or surrogacy or adoption. But we felt we were going to give ourselves a good try for 6 rounds. So after that, I thought, well, I've got 1 more round left. Yeah, it was tough. It was really tough. None of them worked.
None.
And no, none of them worked.
Were they all what are classed as fresh rounds, or did you freeze any eggs?
I think I had 5 fresh rounds and 1 frozen because I just wasn't producing enough eggs. So after my initial experience, I then changed clinics. After my 6th round, we had 2 frozen embryos left. And I didn't feel I wanted to put them back in me because I just didn't feel we were getting anywhere with it. No. So we actually decided to go through surrogacy. I've never spoken about this before. Even though I've spoken about IVF, I've written about IVF, the surrogacy side of it, I don't know why I'm only now ready nearly 10 years later to talk about it.
I'm just going to interrupt you for a quick second. Deborah, you have to write about this, please. I have 2 friends who are, well, they were about to do it, but then obviously we're on lockdown now with Corona. But there is so little positivity around surrogacy. It's seen as some sort of, I don't know, Kim Kardashian quick fix $1 million baby project. But I think if a human touch from somebody like you, I mean, I'm not pushing you to write it, but I would love you to sort of speak about your experiences, because I have 2 great girlfriends, and there are thousands and thousands of women who can't find the right sources online to read about a positive experience, or, you know, just any experience really.
Well, I wouldn't say mine was a positive experience. I'll talk you through it. But so I think surrogacy is an interesting one in the UK because it's not illegal, but it's not legal. So it's a grey area. You're not fully protected, and that's a very scary situation. So you can do it, but if you do it, you're not protected by law. So, for example, there's no you can't make a law-abiding contract. You know, if God forbid a surrogate decided to keep your baby, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing you can do about that.
Oh my God, you're kidding me.
I think people push them very much to give the baby back, but there's nothing you can do about it.
Even if it's not the biological egg and of the carrier, the surrogate mother.
10 years ago, when I was looking into it, there'd never been a case
Yeah.
where a surrogate had kept the baby
Right.
that wasn't genetically the surrogate's baby. So there's two types of surrogacy, just to be clear. There's gestational surrogacy, which is basically where a surrogate is kind of like the oven. You know, it's the couple's egg, it's the couple's sperm, the couple's full embryo put into her. So there's no genetic connection there, but she carries the baby for you, and then she hands the baby over at the end. There had never been a situation where a surrogate, the gestational surrogate, had kept the baby of somebody else. However, the other type of surrogacy is where the actual surrogate uses her own eggs and maybe the sperm of the husband. And in that situation, there had been cases, maybe because, you know, if it's your own egg, maybe it's more difficult to let go of the baby. Maybe they're not comfortable about the couple. Then maybe they found something out about the couple that they're not comfortable with. But there had been situations like that. And because you're not protected by law and by a contract, it's difficult.
I mean, I know very little about surrogacy. All I know in the UK is that you have to legally adopt the child from the surrogate mother, even if it's your egg.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's the part. Yes, I know very little about surrogacy here, but
then I don't know if those laws have changed in the last 10 years. I don't believe they have, but certainly that was the risk at the time for us.
Yeah.
We did it through an amazing charity called COPS. And I know there were only 1 or 2 charities at the time who helped surrogates. I do believe there's a lot more now, which is amazing. And they acted as a broker between us. You know, the man came around to my house. We did a big questionnaire. You know, you have to think about a lot of...
Yeah, you met the potential surrogate before, you know, way in advance.
Oh yes. Firstly, they sent a broker around. He asked us all the questions. What are we looking for? You know, at the time when I was looking, 50% of surrogates smoked. So, for example, I said, I don't want a surrogate who smokes. It was things like, do you want a surrogate who's had children herself before, or do you want somebody who's been a surrogate before?
Did you choose somebody who had children? Or
yes.
Yeah, see, I would, because just as a gut reaction for me, for some reason, I would choose someone who had children already.
Yeah. The lady I chose had a few of her own children, and I felt that because she had a full family, there'd be less of a risk of her ever wanting to keep my child.
My mind's thinking about it now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's necessarily correct, but that's just, it made me feel a bit safer. You know, it never worked out with her. It didn't work out, though she did fall pregnant with our baby. So one of the embryos worked, it took, and she fell pregnant. And I remember that day thinking, oh my God, we're finally going to have a baby. After 4.5 years of trying, we're finally going to have a baby. And I was over the moon. I remember where I was when she called me. I think she did this really early on, and a blue line came up.
Your story is nothing short of a miracle, right?
Total miracle. So when my surrogate fell pregnant, we had, I think, a 6-week scan, and all was great. And we were so happy, my husband and I, as you can only imagine. We started telling our friends, having been so private about it, we started telling people we're going to have a baby via a surrogate. And we had a very mixed response. Some people were very supportive, a few people really dubious, quite rightly, saying, oh, are you sure it's okay? She's not going to keep the baby. And we were like, no, everything's fine. And we booked a 2-week holiday in celebration. And while I was away, I think it was 2 days before we came back from holiday, I got a text or a phone call from her saying, I'm so sorry. I've just been from my 8-week scan, and there's no heartbeat. And it literally felt like somebody had punched me in the stomach. And I remember we flew back on the Saturday, and it was an 11-hour flight back. And I remember the whole journey home just thinking, I'm done. That's it. I'm done. I'm never going to...
How old were you at this point?
How old was I? 36. No, 35. I was 35. I just thought, I'm done. You know, we're not going to pay for any more IVF. I'm not going to do any more. we're going to probably go for egg donation or for adoption, and my chances of ever having my own genetic child are over. And then, so we flew back on the Saturday, and on the Sunday, she texted and said, I'm so sorry, I've been taken off all the drugs and I'm miscarrying. And then the next morning was a Monday morning, and I was meant to be flying to New York for work. And I remember thinking, I've missed my period. So I thought, oh, this is where my head was at the time. I thought I'd started the menopause, because they'd put the fear of God into me about having the early menopause. So for me not to have my period meant that I was going to start the menopause. So I remember thinking, I've got an hour and a half before I'm getting a taxi to go to the airport. So have I got time to have acupuncture to try and bring on my period, or do I go for a pregnancy test? And it was only because of the timing. I didn't have enough time for acupuncture. So instead I went to the chemist and bought a pregnancy test. And I remember unwrapping the pregnancy test and thinking, why are you bothering to do this? You're so stupid. Why have you wasted your money on this pregnancy test? How many pregnancy tests have you done in your life and they've not worked? And what a waste of time. And I kind of put it on the side of the bath, and I didn't even look at it. I was so annoyed with myself.
But you'd used it at this point. I
kind of used it, and then I just put it on the side, and I was angry with myself. And I looked at it, and it said I was 3 weeks pregnant. And I was like, I just couldn't believe it. So she and I must have been pregnant at the same time. I think literally when even now
I know, I can see it in you
saying it. I don't know, I think maybe when she told me she was pregnant, something happened in me. I just mentally something changed. I don't know, I don't like using the word relax, because when you're trying to say, and you tell people to relax, you could do everything but relax, so you can't say that. But something, I don't know, it was a miracle. And again, I think I rang up the clinic, I rang up Tony's clinic, and I said to them, I think I'm pregnant. And the lady at the front desk said, well, you better come in. And she said to me afterwards, I thought maybe you'd gone mad. Like, I thought maybe you'd lost the plot, because obviously the day before she'd found out that we'd lost the surrogate baby. And then within one day I was ringing up to tell her I was pregnant.
Yeah. I love it. I love that story. I love that story.
So Pippa, what happened to you at the end of the 6 rounds? Did you fell pregnant?
Well, I didn't fall pregnant naturally. So on the 6th, we'd done 4 frozens before, because I had great quality embryos, but having great quality frozen eggs or embryos doesn't mean they're going to work, right? So I had 4 failed frozen rounds. And then my husband and I just said, even though the medication made me crazy, we have to go back to doing a fresh round, because this is not working. So we went back in, did a fresh round, different protocol. It was so quick, this protocol. And I was 4.
What do you mean it was so quick?
It's 11 days. My other protocols of fresh rounds were about 3 weeks, I think, or 2.5 weeks. This one that I got put on at my clinic was 11 days, no craziness within my body or mind, and more eggs. What I will say, I got more eggs of a better quality at 41 than I did at 39.
Wow.
So this was a miracle, because I was expecting 2, I was 41 at this point, and then I got the call to say, we've got this many, and they're much better quality eggs than they were when you were 39, when you did the last fresh round, which is great.
Have you changed anything?
Nope. Nothing.
Hadn't changed the diet, hadn't done anything differently. That's so interesting.
It's just how the body works, right? If it's working, my body is obviously like this because of 39. Okay, at 41, I had booming amounts of eggs, and they were exceptional qualities. It's extraordinary. So then I took my son away halfway through the IVF, because it had been a very difficult couple of years, and I said, I'm treating you to a trip. So he and I went away with each other, and I was on the 2-week wait, and I was doing 4 or 5 pregnancy tests every morning. And Deborah, I just knew I was pregnant. Oh, I feel like crying. I knew I was pregnant, and I hadn't done a test. And I called my husband and I said, I'm going to do a test this morning, but I know I'm pregnant. Like, I've got no hormones, I've got no symptoms, nothing, but I'm telling you I'm pregnant. Did the test, did another one, did 3 that morning while I was away with my son abroad, who he was 5.5 at the time, and or he was 6 at the time. And I called my husband and I said, yeah, I knew it. I knew I was pregnant. And then he said, I'm not believing it until you have a blood test. And I continued for like 7 days, like a crazy person.
I would have done the same. I would have done the same.
Yeah, 5 tests. Because before I went away, I bought about 30 from Boots. They're cheap ones, 4-pack of cheap ones. And I knew it. And I said, nothing is going to go wrong with this one. I've miscarried before. Nothing is going to go wrong with this one. And I knew it was going to be fine. It was extraordinary. I knew it would be fine. And then I gave birth to my daughter at 42.
Inexplicably, I fell pregnant 9 months later with my daughter. The first month I tried. And then the week before my 40th birthday, my husband had planned a big surprise 40th. I found out I was pregnant with my third baby. So I've now got 3 children. And what's crazy about it, Pippa, is all those clinics said to me, your eggs are such poor quality. I was only producing very few eggs. I really, from day one, even at the age of 32, 33, I was producing between 2 and 10 eggs if I was lucky. And the irony is, nature works in a very different way to IVF. You only need 1 egg and 1 sperm. Right. So it didn't matter what quality my egg was in nature. Somehow 1 egg, 1 sperm, it happened. And it really is worth, when I speak to women going through IVF now and they have the same problems as me, they've got really poor egg quality or they haven't got enough eggs, I really have to remind them of that. You only need 1. Don't listen to the clinics and they're crazy pushing you to produce 20 eggs.
Yeah, because I had the same. I was reading all these, I'm not a big one for online forums, but when I was going through IVF, you get a little crazy at 2 in the morning. So I'd read all these things and it would be like, I had 15 amazing eggs and these embryos are AA quality and AB quality. And then mine weren't coming back with many or such good quality. And then you're right, it takes 1 egg and 1 sperm. And that's it. So if you get 1 egg and it fertilizes with that sperm, that could be your baby. Like you don't need 14 amazing embryos, you need 1.
Yeah.
So after everything we've been through and this crazy number of years of trying for babies and finally getting the children that we longed for, we're now locked in with them. So they are literally 24/7 with us.
I know.
And we're not allowed to complain. You wouldn't complain.
I'm not complaining. I work pretty much full time, and actually it's a real blessing to be able to spend this time with my kids like this. Yeah. That's definitely the joy I've taken out of this situation, to be around them every day. I'm not sure their homeschooling is going too well, but otherwise, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I've got Audrey sleeping upstairs, my 1-year-old. Asti is nearly 8. And just looking at them both, the different journeys I had with both of them, and just breathing a sigh of relief that my story wasn't great, it hasn't been great, but equally it's made me appreciate the children I do have, and more than anything else.
I agree. You feel so lucky. As I said, even 10 years later, I just feel I still have to pinch myself. Sometimes I see them running around in my garden. I think, how did I end up with 3 kids? How did that ever happen? I always thought I was the one who was never going to happen for, and I've ended up with 3. And I do feel, in my case, miracles do happen.
They do. They really do.
There's more than one way to have a baby. There's more than one way to have a family. And, what I did find along my journey was that as one door closed to me, another one opened.
Right. It's being open to things coming for you, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I couldn't on day 1 be open to the things I was open to on year 4, but it definitely happened in its own stages. And,
And here we are.
Here we are, yeah. Here we are.
Here we are.
Nice to talk to you. Thank you. It was lovely. Bye.